Okay, we are in a homework review, so we're on volume 2 of your book, page 415, number 1 through 9. This is homework due April 16th. And it's a review here of the Pythagorean theorem. So we are either solving for the missing hypotenuse given two legs. So we have a leg and a leg. And so remember we did A, B, C. Little a for the littlest leg. Big C, little c for the hypotenuse. Then we have capital B, go diagonal. We have lowercase b. You could do those for all of those. A, here's C. Always at the right angle is capital C. And then short leg is generally A, little a, capital B, little b, capital B, little b, capital C, little c. So the first thing you always do is identify the hypotenuse directly opposite of the 90-degree angle. And then you just set it up under the Pythagorean theorem. We use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's a leg and the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is always the isolated length on the right side of the equation. So you're always summing the squares of the legs. Then you're just plugging in 5 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. 25 plus 144 equals c squared. That's 169. And at this point, this is where we apply the square root of both sides. And you end up with 13 equals c. The square root of 169 is 13. If you need to use your calculator, you would put in the square root symbol, 169, and equals. So now we have the hypotenuse. We're missing a leg here. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. We don't know A, but we do know B. And this is 60 squared, which is 3,600. I have to figure out what 51 squared is. So now I'm using this 51, and I'm going to use this button, the x squared button. You'll see a little squared up there. Exponent 2. It equals 2,601. Now we have to apply the inverse operations. We have to isolate the a squared. So we're going to subtract 2,601. I think that's 999. 3,600 minus 2,601. 999. A squared. We'll take the square root. Again, square root 999 equals 31.6 for A. You took the square root of A squared, which is A. And the square root of 999, 31.6. And we'll repeat doing that. Here we have 8 squared plus B squared equals 18 squared. Okay. So you're going to be squaring and squaring, subtracting. So this is the order in which we do things, order of operations. It's called PEMDAS. So the next thing you're going to do is exponent. So you're going to square. Okay, and then you're going to have 64 you're going to need to subtract. And then at the end, you'll have b squared equals something. You'll need to take the square root. So I'll let you finish problem 3. Now we apply the converse of the Pythagorean theorem when you're given three sides. Remember to identify that you have the longest side. So the shortest side is A, then B for the middle side. The longest side has to be 197. Look carefully at the numbers. Longest one is C. So these are A and B. So this time I apply the Pythagorean theorem, but I put a question mark to determine if it's true. So we're looking for true under the Pythagorean theorem. So we're going to write the Pythagorean theorem. We'll plug in the numbers and we'll put a little question mark right there. 28 squared plus 195 squared, does that equal 197 squared? These are some large numbers. We'll use a calculator. 28 squared is 784. 195 squared is 3,825, or 38,025. And 197 squared is 38,809. So I need to add 38,025 plus 784, and I get 38,809 equals 38,809. True. So this can be a right triangle. You'll apply the same thing here. 30 squared plus 122 squared equals 125 squared. So you'll need to check that with your calculator. Now we have a diagonal here given the state of Wyoming. Notice geometrically, or if you were to look at this on a map, it's a curved earth. So it doesn't quite look like a square, but it is. There's a 90-degree angle here, making this a leg. We'll call this A. B, the right angle is here. So this diagonal is C. So you're going to apply A squared plus B squared equals C squared. You know A and B, 275 squared, 365 squared, but you don't know C squared. So again, you're going to square, then you're going to sum. That means add them together. So you're going to square each one, then add them together, and then take the square root. And that will give you your C. Moving to number 7. Write an equation you could use to find the length of the missing side of each right triangle. So it's given that these are right triangles. And we're given A's and B's here, in this case A and C, in this case B and C. So remember, we're using A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It says to round the answer to the nearest tenth. So I'll do number 7, because it's the same as B. 8. We have 48 squared plus 55 squared equals C squared. And you'll set up number 8 the same way. So we'll need to use a calculator again. 48 squared equals 2,304. 55 squared is 3,025 equals C squared. I'm just going to sum these together. I have this answer already, so I'll just do that plus 2,304. That's 5,329 equals C squared. I'll take the square root of that number, 5,329. I get 73. And I was given some units, so I'm going to go ahead and put yards for C. So the 8 will be the same setup, same way. But 9 is a little different because you're given B and C. So we're given B and C. We were going to solve it for A. And now we have some decimals. So I'm going to use a parentheses here so I don't make any mistakes. I like to group it with a grouping symbol called the parentheses. And now I have A squared plus, I have to use my calculator again, 5.1 squared is 26.01. 12.3 squared, 151.29. Now I'm solving for a leg, so I have to subtract this from both sides. And I solve it for A squared, 26.01, 125.28, and finally I take the square root. And I get 11.2. Okay. The next page on your homework is page 427. And this is a short one. It's 1 through 6. It's more practice in the same way. But they've given you some more realistic examples here. We have a tree, and how far up the tree is the cat? You're given a distance away from the tree and the ladder distance. Well, so that's C, because think, there's the 90-degree angle. If we labeled this C, this would be then A and B. Well, they've used H. So that's H feet for height. Let's call it B, little b. We'll call this little a. So then we apply A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We're solving it for the height of the tree. That's a leg, the vertical leg here. We know A, it's 5 squared. We have C, that's 12 squared. 25 plus B squared equals 144. Now I'm subtracting, so it's a little different. You might have thought, oh yeah, 169. No, you're subtracting from both sides. 144 minus 25 is 119. And we're going to take the square root of both sides. And we get 10.908, which would be 10.98. Round to the nearest tenth, though. So we're going to go 10.9 because the next digit's a 0. So it's 10.9. We also need to give the units. And on a real life example, you could double check to make sure this makes sense. The longest side is 12. This ladder's 5 feet away from the tree, so 10.9 feet is reasonable because it's a little less than the length of the ladder. So here we have another one. We have a, how deep is the water? We have a ship at the top here. So here's your 90-degree angle, capital C, little c, capital A, little a, capital B, little b. And we'll just punch in there. We can call this B instead of X. And we have A squared plus B squared equals C squared for the Pythagorean theorem. And we're just plugging in. 6 squared plus B squared equals 15 squared. So now you can see we're kind of in the same situation as here. What you're going to do is you're going to square. But B squared and the number are going to be on the left, so then you're going to need to subtract from both sides. And then you take the square root at the end. Make sure you give your units too as feet. Okay, next problem. Now we've got an interesting one. There's a triangle, triangular prism here. And what we have is we have the height of the prism. We also have the length from the middle point of the prism out to the outside. So that creates a 90-degree angle right there. That's your capital C. So then on the outside of here is little c. We'll call it little c. And now we have the top of the prism. That makes one of the legs. So this is your little a. And we'll call this point right here capital B for this vertex. So this length here is little b. So what do we know? We don't know the hypotenuse. We know two of the legs. The 8, well, it's 4 centimeters. Remember, that's a vertex, capital C. That's your little c. The vertices are capital letters. The little letters are the lengths. And we have a little arrow going over here showing it's 4. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We don't know c. It's the hypotenuse in this situation. We have 4 squared plus 11 squared equals c squared. 16 plus 121 equals c squared. I can add those up in my head. That's 137 equals c squared. So now I'm going, notice when you're solving for hypotenuse, you're just summing them. You're not having to subtract, which is nice. So I need, if I was to guesstimate, it's 121 is 11, so it's probably around 11 and a half centimeters. And it's the longest side, so that should be square root of 137, 11.7 centimeters equals C. So you have the same situation here. Okay, we have capital A, capital B, little b. Remember, the 90-degree angle's here, so this is the hypotenuse opposite of it. We'll call it little c. And you're going to solve it the same as you did on this problem. So you're plugging in for A and for B and solving for C. The same as number 3. Number 5. Refer to the map of the Woodlands camp at the right. Okay, we have this camp. That's pretty cool. Round your answers to the nearest 10th. How far is it from Sycamore Cabin to Oak Canyon, which is right here? So we have a lot of business going on, but let's cover it up. And we can see that this is the hypotenuse. And this is a leg, so we'll call it, it's a little bit shorter of a leg, we'll call it A. So that would be B, A, B, C. So to find Sycamore Cabin to Oak Cabin, we need to go along this route B here. We know A and C, so let's go A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now they've not a lot of space here, so let's move it to the right to plug in for A. 30 squared plus B squared equals 50 squared. Okay, now I can work down the page a little bit. 900 plus B squared equals 2500. I'm going to subtract 900 from both sides. Now I ran out of space again, so I'm going to move over to the right just a little bit and write what I have left. B squared equals 2500 minus 900 is 1600. And that's nice because I'm going to take the square root of that. The square root of 1600 is 40. Again, you could use your calculator. We want to make sure we give it as yards. And then we go on to B. A camper in Hickory Cabin wants to visit a friend in Elm Cabin. So we got to find Hickory Cabin and Elm Cabin. So this case, if she walks to the mess hall first, how much farther? So we need to find both distances. Okay, so we need to find the distance here. Okay, well, we already know that that's 60 in this situation. She wants to go to the mess hall. We know this length is 40. So we need to find, we'll call this A. Let me use a different color. We can call this A. The distance to the mess hall will be B, and then that's C. So let's go find how far it is from Hickory to the mess hall. So Hickory to the mess hall will be a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We know a is 40, but we don't know b. We need 60 squared. I know that that's 1600. That's 3600. I need to subtract 1600. I ran out of space. So I have b squared, because that's gone, equals 2000. And I'll take the square root to find the length of b. B equals square root of 2000, 44.7 yards. Okay, so now it's a tricky question. How much farther if she walks to the mess hall first? So if she wants to go Hickory to Elm, so Hickory to Elm, through the mess hall, you have to add the 40 and the 44.7. That's 44.7 plus 40, which is 84.7. And they ask, how much further than the direct route? Well, the direct route is 60. So the direct route from here to here is 60 yards, which makes a difference of 24.7. And finally, justify conclusions. Rodrigo is buying a 5.5-foot long fishing rod for his father for his birthday. Oh, okay. He wants to put it in a box so that his dad will not be able to guess what is in the box. The box he needs to use is 4 feet long and 4 feet wide. Will the pole fit in the box? Justify your reasoning. So let's look at this again. The box he wants to use is 4 feet long and 4 feet wide. So it's 4 this way and 4 feet this way. It's a box, so you know that that's the right angle. If I use a red marker, it will look better. There's your 90-degree angle. It's an isosceles triangle, right triangle. We have feet here. So one of them will be A, since these are legs making a 90-degree angle. A and B. And then we need the diagonal, which will be C. So what we're really asking ourselves is, that's 5.5, right? The fishing rod. So we're asking ourselves, if I was to draw a fishing rod here, he has his pole. He's trying to see if he can put it in. The longest way to put it in is sideways. So this is your fishing pole. C has to be bigger than 5.5 feet. Longer than 5.5 feet. So let's see. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We'll put the 4 in the 4 for A and B. We have 16 and 16 is 32. So your final thing is to determine if the length C here is more than 5.5 feet. So it's going to be really close. Let's take a look. Square root of 32, my guess is that it is longer. 5.65 feet. So you have to determine yes or no. Can he fit this fishing rod into the box? Yes. Diagonally. Okay, so that's the first 2 pages of your homework. The last page will be after the next lesson, page 535, where we're going to cover the distance formula.